is that the resurrection gives us perseverance in suffering. Now, there's two particular passages in Paul that have really blown my mind this past week as I've been meditating on the resurrection. The first is Philippians 3:10. Paul says that I may know Him in the power of the resurrection. What a fantastic prayer. What a fantastic hope. What a great goal for us to have as believers, for us and our children and our spouses and our friends, that we may know Him in the power of the resurrection. As I first looked at the passage, I didn't really look at its context. I was just doing a basic search. And I thought, well, surely that must be that I may know the power of the resurrection so I can fight against sin. But that's not what the context is. The context is that he may persevere in suffering. The context is that he may reject his idols of self-righteousness, that he would lay aside all the things that he once counted as gain and see them as nothing in light of the resurrection of the cross. What's amazing about that passage is that Paul had the perfect resume for God. He was of the right people, he had done the right things, he was the right kind of person, but it wasn't enough. He was still a sinner. No matter what his resume had on it, he was going to be condemned for his sin. He had done everything right, and he looked at it in light of the resurrection and said, that is rubbish. You see, we all try to build up our own worship. We all try to build up our own little ziggurats so we can have confidence in our self-righteousness. We have the hammer and nail of self-righteousness in our hand, and we're constantly trying to build up a resume that will please God. And as we look at that self-righteousness, we need to look at it in disgust and say that I may know the resurrection of Christ. We need to stop nailing up the building parts of the ziggurat and trust the one who was nailed to the cross and risen again for our salvation. You see, we love to build up our identity in the things that we love and the things that make us feel good. But nothing saves us apart from the resurrection of Christ. We must seek to know Him in the power of resurrection, because the power of our self-righteousness will only bring condemnation. The second sentence that really has challenged me is 2 Timothy 2:8. Paul commands Timothy to remember Jesus Christ in His resurrection. One translation just simply says, remember the resurrection. Remember the resurrection. What good counsel this is from Paul. Now, we don't know what Timothy is going through. He's going through some kind of a trial. I would love to know what it was. This is Paul, an apostle, writing to a pastor that he had trained up. Timothy had through some discouragement, and his counsel to him is remember the resurrection. Now, I have to admit, as a pastor, I've gone through valleys of discouragement. And that's not because of you, it's because of me. I'm a sinner. I have self-worth in my sin. I go through valleys of discouragement because of the spiritual nature of the work, my own sin nature, and my lack of trusting in God to complete His good work. And I've just finished a year, and it's amazing to me how many different valleys of discouragement I've gone through. And in the same day, or the next day, I'll also have just high peaks of praising God for His goodness. And you can see, and as I reflect upon this, it's based upon how much I'm trusting God, how much I'm praising Him for what He does. You see, in both instances, my discouragement or my praise for what He's doing, I need to remember one thing, and it's the resurrection. When I'm discouraged, I need to remember the resurrection, that He will bring about His good work. When we are discouraged and tempted and tried and in despair, we need to remember the resurrection because it gives us our only hope. We also need to remember the resurrection when we're praising God, because we can begin to say, look how good I've done these things. We can begin to say, look how great everything is from what I've done. And we remember the resurrection because it's only because of God's goodness that we can do anything that pleases Him. Remember the resurrection. This is the counsel for our souls in life's valleys and on the mountaintops. We must be thankful constantly for what He has accomplished for us.